What you're about to watch is not speculation, rumor, or revisionist history. Today's guest was there. Jamala Shakur is Tupac's first cousin. She lived with him, worked alongside him, traveled with him, and most importantly, she was with him in Las Vegas the weekend his life was taken. This conversation isn't about headlines. It's about family, truth, memory, and the human cost of everything the world turned into mythology. Jamala is also an author, a mother, and a woman who chose healing after an unimaginable loss. So we're not here to sensationalize pain. We're here to document truth while the people who lived it are still here to tell it. This is the Art of Dialogue, and this is Jamala Lesane. Welcome to the Art of Dialogue.
What's up, Del Rey? Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Like I said, I appreciate you. We talked about 2 years ago, and we tried to get you on, and I'm so thankful that you agreed to come on and share your truth and your story.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. In 2008, Keefe D confessed to the involvement in the murder of your cousin Tupac Shakur, whom you drove to Las Vegas with on that tragic weekend. When that confession happened, did any government agency or law enforcement ever inform Afeni Shakur that a deal involving no jail time had been made?
No, I say that because after the passing of my cousin's death, I know for sure that my aunt did not want to spend her time or energy trying to figure out who murdered her son. I've never heard of Keefe D until he started opening up his mouth.
Wow. That's interesting because Afeni passed in, what was that, May of 2016?
Yes.
Um, so, and the reason why I asked that is because do you think Afeni deserved the truth while she was still alive as to a situation where somebody had confessed to being involved with the murder of her son?
Of course, she would have deserved the truth to know, but that's something that she didn't want to spend, again, her time or energy seeking. If the truth was, if the truth was to land on her lap, that's one thing. But she was not going to spend her time or energy seeking that. She would rather be at the casino. How about that? Facts.
I think that's very important what you just said. And the reason why I brung that question up was because nobody informed her. Usually during a case involving a homicide or something like that, when they find somebody or somebody makes a deal, confesses or anything like that, the first thing that they do is they get in touch with the next of kin to let them know that some kind of resolution has been made or somebody confessed, or and the fact that they didn't reach out to her speaks volumes. That's the reason why I asked that question, because she was supposed to be notified in regards to that, and the fact that she wasn't, it says a lot as to what's going on today. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree, of course.
Your birthday and Tupac's birthday are 5 days apart. What did that closeness and timing mean to your bond growing up?
That closeness meant to us is that, yes, we are 2 years apart. And at that time, we were the only two Geminis in the family, right? He's June 16th and I'm June 21st. And we grew up close. It was a close-knit family. And not just Tupac, but it was a bunch of us. It was like 8 of us underneath one roof. So imagine 8 of us living in a 3-bedroom apartment, you know? And that's what that setting was. And with Pac and I, being that we was the closest, we got along pretty good, you know. Pac would always, he always had to be a star of whatever setting that we would be pretending to be. So, for example, one of the settings would be, okay, if he's Bruce Lee, I'm Jim Kelly. You know what I'm saying? If he's, I don't know if you remember Cornbread Earl and me. If he's Cornbread, I'm me. You know what I mean? So Pac was always already the star of whatever scenario that we were pretending to be at that moment, at any moment.
So did you guys also jointly at any time celebrate y'all birthday together since the birthdays were so close and y'all lived in the
It's
same
funny.
same apartment building or apartment, should I say?
It's funny you asked that, because yes, growing up, we did celebrate our birthdays together. But the last year of Pac's birthday, when he turned 25, was the year that we was gonna celebrate our birthday again together. But this time, we're now adults. He is now Tupac Shakur, the greatest rapper of all time at that time. And we're both adults, and he thought it would be great for us to celebrate our birthdays together that year, the summer of 96.
Before the world knew him as Tupac, who was Tupac to you as a cousin?
Tupac was very cunning. He was smart, charming, and Tupac had a use of big words. He knew a lot of big words, and that was one of his strengths. And of course, my weakness. So we would go back and forth with the words that he knew and the words that I didn't know. And sometimes that alone right there will uh put me in a situation where I would have to say unordinary things that that really didn't match the mismatch, because I didn't understand what the words he was saying out his mouth. So let's just be clear on that.
So basically he was very articulate.
Very articulate, and I wasn't. Not like that.
I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your honesty. Um, how did being family shape the way he trusted you compared to people around him later in life?
I believe what he trusted in me was my honesty, my authenticity, and the fact that I was always present, reliable, and available.
And could you share with me one of those instances where you could give me example of what you're talking about in regards to that trust and being available?
Yes. So okay, I'll give you a perfect example. So this is later in the years. This is right now we're in California, living in Calabasas, and I had gotten dragged out of New York to come to the South, in which I didn't really feel comfortable living at. I didn't like it. It was too slow. Pac was already in California. So I had called Pac to see if it was all right if I come out there. And of course, he was like, oh, yes, bet. Come, bring Moo coming. Make sure Moo get on the next flight out. So I'm on the next flight out to California. And for the most part, my purpose at the house was I gotta point this out to you, Del Rey, is that Pac loved fried chicken. And I was the fried chicken queen, right? And I would fry him his chicken. That was one of my reasons, not particularly reason to be there, but he loved my presence of being there because I would fry the chicken for him. I would make sure that the Outlaws get up every morning so that they are 10 steps behind Tupac when he's on his way to the studio. You know, I was like the house manager. I held the house down. I held the fort down.
What do people misunderstand most about Tupac when they speak about him without a family member's context, like yourself?
The misunderstanding that most people may have about Tupac is that Tupac was not crazy. People misunderstood Tupac a lot, you know. Tupac was not crazy. Tupac spoke from his heart, and Tupac was very passionate about what he spoke about. And not only that, he stood for what he spoke on, and he meant every word he said, you know. And those are some of the qualities that some people misunderstood about Tupac. Tupac was very kind, he was generous, you know. He was he showed compassion. He had love for humanity, you know what I mean? He had love for his black woman, for the sisters and the queens and the elderlies. And lastly, his love for children was impeccable, you know? And a lot of people need to know that his love for children and how his love for the black females and the elderlies in our community, how impeccable that was.
Why do you think people like to focus on the thug image and all of those things instead of focusing on the other positive attributes about your cousin?
What people need to understand is what when he say thug and thug life and what that meant to Tupac. The hate you give infants, the hate you give to infants,
F's everybody.
everybody, you know? And that's what thug life meant to him. I may have said it a little wrong, but that's what that was the main point of what thug life meant to him. Thug life didn't mean let's go and rob somebody, let's pull out your gat and shoot up a block, let's go, you know, snatch an old lady's purse and let's see who could do uh how much bids you did in jail, how many bids I did in jail. That wasn't his perception of thug life. Not at all. You know, you got to understand also, Del Rey, that um Tupac didn't, you know, he didn't catch his first um rap until he became a star. You know, that's when he got his first arrest, was when he became a star. So he didn't grow up to become a criminal. His goal was not to become a gangster, a thug life person that, you know, wanted to be a gangster. You know, he was very artistic and he knew that he had a talent within himself that he knew that he could use to prosper and also teach to others, you know? He was big on that. Sharing information, you know, big on reading books, you know. I remember it was one moment we was in Calabasas and it was this is prior to Vegas, of course. And one day he had came home with a gang of books for the Outlaws to read. And one of them was the Prophet by Khalil Gibran, The Art of War, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, Panther Baby by Jamal Joseph. You know, it was a gang of all sorts of books. As a Man Thinketh, you know, that was another good book that Pac would recommend that the Outlaws read. And then after reading the book, it was always a discussion following after the book reading. Yeah.
That's very important. I just did an interview with the CO Blaze, one of the COs from up at Clinton, and he said that Tupac was actually teaching class and helping the guys in the jail obtain their GEDs. So what you're saying, it sounds pretty accurate according to what he was doing even in Calabasas after he had got out of prison, and the same thing he was doing. So he was really truly practicing what he preached. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Um, was Tupac different with family than he was with friends or business associates from your observation?
Tupac was always Tupac to me. So I didn't really see no different um you know no, Tupac was just Tupac to me. If you allow me to explain the incident that occurred in Calabasas one time, right? So this is one time in Calabasas. I'm up in we in California, and I get a phone call from my daughter's aunt, Sabrina, at Sexy Brain, right? She's from Harlem, her on 40th Street, and she's mainly known in Harlem as quote unquote the Black Madam. So she would get a gang of chicks, right? And the chicks was a tool to use to seduce men for money, right? So Sabrina's in Cali. She called me up like, "Yo, Moo, I'm in San Diego. What's up? I want to come see you." So I go and ask Pac if it was all right if Sabrina come and visit me. She got a couple of girls with her, and if it was okay for her to come see me. Pac was like, "Yeah, it's cool, of course. You know, family, she's family." So Sabrina come. At this time, she come by herself. Yasmin, Yaki's mother, pick her up from the airport, bring her to the house. So she come in. She's meeting Pac for the first time. So she already got her persona of what she thinking of what Pac is, right? So when she come through the house and she meets Pac and she see Pac, she see all the books that I had just mentioned sitting around. She see how Pac is communicating with the Outlaws and how there's notes scattered and how you see Yafeo, Yaki, Gaddafi reading some of the notes, and Sabrina's asking him, why are you reading these notes? And he's telling her, Pac is Pac is making us read these notes and memorize a lot of certain quotes that Malcolm X has said, or certain other public figures had said, and that they had to memorize these quotes in order for them to go to the studio. So in the meantime, so Sabrina's observing this setting, right? Her friend, who's coming to the house as well, she's on her way over. Now, her friend has a different agenda. Her friend is coming to try to seduce Pop, right? So bust it. So once she come through the door, the mood is set. I'm frying chicken in the kitchen. The music is playing. Outlaws, we all crackling, jackling, whatever. And she start dancing for him and shit. Oops, excuse me. She start dancing. And next thing you know, Pac get up and he take her like, somewhere on the beeline around the corner somewhere. So we trying to figure out like, damn, what happened? Because we thinking everything is cool. She come back out and she starts crying. So me and Sabrina, we like, yo, what's wrong? What happened? So she didn't want to say nothing at that time. But later, let's say a year later, because at that moment she was so embarrassed of what Pac was saying to her. And what Pac had told her was, he told her that she was too beautiful and to recognize her value, and that she was more worthy than this trying to seduce men for money, and how valuable that she is, and that she didn't have to do that. And no one has never said anything like that to her before. She's considered, let's say, fast. She's out there, you know what I mean? She's trying to get her money up. And no one has never said that to her. But that moment right there was the moment that actually changed her life. Because from that moment on, she has reformed. She changed her whole life around. And to this day, I still communicate with her. She still shows much gratitude and love to Pac, to the family, to myself, and how she's become a changed woman. And I give much love and shout out to her. And that's and that's just the characteristic of who Tupac is, you know, at home, in the streets, you know what I mean? His gratitude, his love, his protection, his profession, to profess, to provide, and to protect the Black woman.
I think it's so interesting that you say that because all of the flack and all of the misinformation out there in regards to Tupac about women. You're
Mm-hmm.
somebody who knew your cousin firsthand, and that was a story that I've never heard that you just shared.
Right.
And I believe that if the young lady probably told people that she didn't know that she was at Tupac's house and he told her that, and that was one of the reasons that she changed her life around, they wouldn't believe it. I'm glad that you got a chance to share that story because that's very important. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes.
How did Tupac handle pressure privately when the cameras and the fame and the entourage were gone?
Hmm. It's funny how you asked that question. Because it was moments when living in Calabasas again, right? And you got to understand, prior to Vegas, Pac had a lot of lawsuits going on. It was a lot of lawsuits pending. You know, it was a lot going on with Pac. And it was the one moment where he would come home and sit on the couch, and I remember him expressing to me how tired he was, you know? And I didn't get it then. When he was saying it at the moment, I'm thinking maybe he just needs some rest. But he would repeat it constantly, like, wow, I'm tired. I'm tired. And in retrospect, it's as if he was already feeling drained, you know? It was darkness already building around him, where he was trying to navigate to see the light again. And at some point it was draining him. He felt drained. He did. He felt drained.
So, do you think that there were a lot of issues that he was dealing with that sometimes he wouldn't articulate that he probably held in from your observation?
Well, I don't know if it was anything that he held in, because Pac was a very boisterous brother, so he didn't hold in a lot. And Pac's story and his life was basically an open book. You know what I mean? So you got to look at what you see in the headlines every day. Again, I mentioned the lawsuits that was pending. You had Vibe magazine giving him a photo shoot with him in a straight jacket and things of that nature, right? So you would think that even with those scenarios, it could build up pressure, you know, and rightfully, if he felt pressured, he had a right to feel pressured.
So it's funny that you say that, or interesting, should I say, that you say that. So the Vibe, what was that? Vibe or Source? I think Vibe or Source magazine with Tupac in the straitjacket. That bothered him.
I'm not going to say it bothered him, because he may have chose to do that in a straight jacket, because you got to understand Pac's who Pac is, Pac is the brother that, yeah, I'm that crazy MF that put me in a straight jacket and see and watch me still come up. And I'm still that brother that will make you cry too. At the same time, you know what I mean? But it's not Pac. It's the other people, how they perceive it, how they look at it from the outside looking in. You know what I mean? Pac knew exactly what he was doing. It's just how we looking at it, how we receiving it. You know what I'm saying?
What's a side of Tupac that only family got to see?
Decided to, wow, because Tupac had so many sides. So, he was very funny. He was comical. It would be moments where, okay, for instance, it would be Pac and all my brothers, and we could all be in the same room. You got my mother, my aunt, and we all in the same room in the kitchen, and out of nowhere, Pac would bust out and do a scene out The Godfather, for instance. You know what I'm saying? And or do a scene out of Scarface, the movie Scarface, and we're all chime in. So Pac is playing Al Pacino, and I'm playing Michelle Pfeiffer or whatever character at that moment that's going down. And Pac was very funny, and he could just bust out in any character at any given moment. He's in character, you know. Hey, Sally, what you got over there? He'll talk Italian or some shit like that. You know what I mean?
So, if I can ask you, did you see it early on, the talent, the willingness to be bigger, to be more than his current conditions that he was in, even when you guys were younger?
I did. So what I realized, even as you growing up in the city, right, is that, and this is one of the things that inspired me to write Pac and Tari, but we'll get into that, is that Pac was a very, he looked beyond the 4 blocks. His vision was beyond the 4 blocks, beyond the corners that surrounds us, right? He knew that there was a way, he wanted a way out. And he knew that the only way out was from his own talents that he had. He always had a gift of acting. He was part of a theater company in his early years. He went to the School of Baltimore Arts, and he always had a talent of writing. But besides that, his vision of looking beyond the 4 blocks was very valid, because most of us get comfortable in our settings. Like I mentioned before, we grew up we lived in a 3-bedroom apartment on the 5th floor. You know what I'm saying? And Pac always seen more outside of that. He always asked questions and wanted to know why we have to live like this. Why do we have to be so poor? And just with that, with that, with that digging deep into him made him hungry and thirsty to succeed.
If Tupac was sitting here watching you answer these questions, what do you think he'd want people to finally hear?
He would want people to finally hear the truth. He would want people to finally hear that I'm not bugging. I wasn't bugging. I'm not crazy, you know? And if he was here right now, or even the fact that he's not here, let's just say he's getting a kick out of all of this right now. He's getting a kick out of it. You know what I mean? He loves that we're still talking about him. He loves it, and he's getting a kick out of it, for sure.
Tupac was shot once before he went to prison involving the New York incident, and then again 1 year, 9 months, and 8 days later. How did it affect you realizing how close those violent moments were in his life, not knowing that he wouldn't survive the Vegas shooting?
How did that affect me? Okay, so it was a big difference between the New York shooting and the Vegas shooting. When I went to see Pac at the hospital in New York, his energy was a little bit more broader, you know. He was able to leave out the hospital on his own, you know, and he had enough strength to do that, right? In Vegas, when I seen him on September 7th, when I got the phone call that Pac was shot, we're at the hotel, Kadada and we get the phone call. And when I seen him at the hospital that night, I knew that moment that Pac would have to fight for his life. He was going to have to fight hard for his life. Yeah.
Did you get a chance to visit Tupac while he was at Rikers Island or Clinton Correctional Facility?
Clinton Correctional Facility, definitely, yes. Damora, yes.
And what was that like for you? Give us a glimpse into that.
At this point it's now common because he's not the first one to have gone to jail. You know what I mean? So this is a pattern that I had already walked through before with my brothers, with Mutulu Shakur, visiting him in jail, you know, and Tupac just became added to the list. You know, it was heartbroken, you know what I mean? Because it wasn't something that we foreseen to happen, you know? But we knew that it was something it was something that a journey that he would be able to get through, you know, because he watched his older cousins, he's watched other family members come in and out of the jail system. You know what I mean? So it wasn't something that we wasn't oblivious to. It's just that we didn't think it would happen to Tupac.
And so when you went in there and saw him, was he happy to see you?
Of course, he was happy to see me and any other body that came to see. You know, when you in jail, you happy to get a visit. Period. When you locked up, you happy to get a visit, regardless, right? So yeah, he was happy.
How did prison change him emotionally when you spoke with him after he got out? Did you see anything change? Did it humble him? Did it make him harder? What was his demeanor once he got out?
Pac's demeanor once he got out of jail, he was pissed off. He was happy to be home, yes, but I think he had a lot of let's say, how can I say? He had a lot of I's to dot and a lot of T's to cross. The first thing he did when he got out of jail was he went in the studio and recorded Hit 'em Up. And that right there is self-explanatory. If you want to know how he felt, he went in the studio and dropped in and did recorded Hit 'em Up.
And we understood based on Hit 'em Up as well as other interviews that he did how he felt about certain situations. Did he ever tell you about the disenchantment that he had involving the situation that happened in New York, what he had thought had happened, and him being so angry about that involving Biggie in that situation?
Not just telling me, but just sitting in the room and just overhearing the conversations that's taking place amongst all of us. You know, it's not like me and Pac had a one-on-one sit down. No, we're in the kitchen. It's all of us in the building. You know what I mean? You got my mother, you got his mother, his sister, my brothers, and collectively we're all discussing the situation that happened prior of him going to jail, you know, and then his future plans of what he's planning to do in the near future.
I think that's very, very interesting because as a lot of people would think, you know, it was this isolated incident as far as him being, you know, around a bunch of people like Suge and all of those people. And for you to explain that it was a family affair and he would express his feelings around family, you know, is very important. Thanks for sharing that. Did Tupac ever talk to you about feeling targeted or unsafe long before Las Vegas?
No, nope. And long before Las Vegas, Tupac is the type of brother that you would see. It was a couple of times, Del Rey, that I would run in the park on 125th Street and he'd be dolo by itself. You know what I mean? It'd be times you would run into Pac and Pac will be I've heard many people say, "Yeah, I seen Pac at the drive-thru at Wendy's," you know, or you'll run into Pac at the Seatown supermarket on 135th and 8th Avenue. Because one thing Pac is not going to do is wait on anybody. So when he's ready to go to the store, to the studio, to the gas station, wherever he's ready to go, of course he's like, "Yo, come on, Castro, Yaki, Edie, where y'all at? Come, I'm ready." And if they not ready, Pac is out the door. So Pac didn't have fear of anything or anyone. He felt like he's in his community, he amongst his black people in the community, and he shouldn't have no fear of his own kind in his community. Not at all.
And I that takes me somewhere because Tupac made a statement in one of the interviews uh, after he was shot in New York, and he said that he never thought that he would be harmed by black folk. In that instance, um, did he ever express to you how he felt? Because you're explaining what he felt before, but then when that situation happened, he basically explained that it changed something in him.
It did. He was disappointed. It disappointed him that it was his own kind that he felt like he couldn't trust anymore. You know, these are brothers that he at one point felt like they was his comrades, his friends. They make music together, artistically we're friends, creatively we're brothers. And no, he didn't feel no threat at all. And then after it all went down, it of course he felt like anybody else would. Like, wow, these what I thought was real is not really real. You know what I mean? And that disheartened him, you know, because it was his own kind, his own brothers. You know what I mean? It's like eating steak with you and then you talking about me behind my back after I done fed you steak. Like, come on, yo.
When Tupac joined Death Row Records, how did you feel about the people that surrounded him?
When Tupac joined Death Row Records, honestly, me, our family, we was scared. You know what I mean? We was scared. We was frightened because we had already heard the stories of Death Row and Suge Knight, and we've seen the interviews or not even the interviews, or video clips of the incident between him and Vanilla Ice. So Death Row had already had a reputable reputation, right? So we was concerned, but then at the same time, that way we had to trust Tupac's instincts, we had to trust his judgment, and we had to trust his heart. So we went along with it.
So did you guys also think about the gang aspect of it from that perspective and not really being familiar with that element and coming to California and Tupac now being involved or surrounded with that?
Of course we did. Because as New Yorkers, we did not understand the gang element of what was going on in California, particularly because it was over colors, and that didn't make sense to us. I remember one time I'm in California. At this time, we're in Sherman Oaks, California, and um, I'm coming from New York, and I must have had on a red or blue shirt, and Pop was telling me, "No, Moo, you can't wear that. You can't wear that out here." And when he said that to me at that time, I didn't understand it. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, come on, yo, I'm coming from New York. We don't care about that. Colors don't mean nothing to us. But he's making it clear that colors means a lot to these brothers out here in LA, in California, you know, and 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 I knew that Pac was not with the red or the blue. Pac is a likable guy. Red and blue love Pac. You know what I'm saying? So he flowed with the flow. If you like me, I like you. You cool with me, I'm cool with you. It didn't particularly matter too much to him. What mattered to him was making money. He wanted to make money so that he can provide for his family.
I think that's very important that you just said that, Jamala, because a lot of people have been running around with these stories talking about Tupac was a blood, how he got uh, entrenched or involved in that. Like I said, somebody who uh, behind the curtains at the house, home, where one can feel safe. You just said that Tupac wasn't with the red or with the blue.
He was not with the red or the blue. Not at all. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. How did Tupac talk about Suge Knight in private versus in public?
I never really particularly heard Tupac talk about Suge Knight in private or public. I know when Suge Knight used to come to the house in Calabasas, um, I've never sat in the room while Suge and Pac and everybody else was in the room conversating. I would most of the time excuse myself. So I never sat and engaged in any conversations with Suge. In fact, I could have been overlooked, you know, because I was in the background. And when Suge came through the door, I would go upstairs, you know. So Suge probably overlooked me. He probably didn't really see me like that in the house, my presence.
Did you ever believe, like so many people do, and it's still rumors running on the internet today, that Suge Knight may have had something to do with Tupac's death?
Yeah. Um, I did believe it. I did. But I had my own, I had my own reason of believing it, and it was only if you could allow me to elaborate. And that is the day of leaving to go to Vegas. Um, Suge had came to pick Pac up because it was me, it was Kadada and I, Yaki, Edie, and Castro. Pac's first initiative was to come to Atlanta because he had gotten a phone call from either my aunt or my mom stating that my one of my brothers had stolen one of Pac's guns out the house. So at this time, it was a lot of my brothers, cousins, family members that was still, engaging in the same bull crap that was that's been taking place for years, repeating the same patterns. So it was a lot of us still going back and forth to jail, drug abusing, and coming in and out of rehabs. So that pattern was continuing at that moment. And my brother, who is sober and a recovering addict right now, but at that time, he was getting high and he may have sold the gun out the house. But when Pac heard it, he was pissed off. He was tired of the fact that why we can't get our shit together, why we still going through this type of shit. You know what I mean? And he wanted to come to Atlanta to deal with that family situation. But Suge insisted that he deal with that family situation later, and let's continue to go to Vegas.
At that particular time, when Suge, when you understand that Suge convinced him to do otherwise other than going to Atlanta to handle the situation about the gun, did you think that it was anything nefarious on Suge's part? Like, come on, because there was some underlying thing going on.
Kadada, her observation was more enlightening because may have mentioned before, I'm a little naive. I'm from New York. I don't really know the Cali lifestyle or lingo or so forth, right? So again, Suge is assisting that Pac come to Vegas, right? He also was assisting that Pac did not need his bulletproof vest because Pac always traveled with his bulletproof vest. So Sugar's like, nah, Pac, you don't need the bulletproof vest. You don't need none of that. I got you. I got you. So meanwhile, while Suge is outside in his car with his, at the time, 4-year-old daughter, Kadada and I is sitting on the stoop, or I should say in front of the house, waiting on Pac and the Outlaws to get themselves together. I wasn't supposed to go. Pac didn't want me to go to Vegas, but Kadada did not want to be the only girl on the trip. So she convinced Pac to please allow me to go. At that time, my daughter Imani, who was 4 years old at that time, didn't want any of us to go. So Pac is like, yo, everybody empty out your pockets, yo. Give Monty all your money. Monty, what you want us to bring you back? You want a fat burger? Monty wanted a fat burger, right? So we was able to get Imani's approval. Everybody gave Monty their money, flipped their pockets inside out to give Monty the money, while Kadada and I is sitting in front of the house. Kadada is noticing body language, Suge's body language, right? Because Sugar's in his car, he's laying back, he's on the phone, and Kadada is noticing she's saying certain things like, look at him. He could be plotting to do something right now. We wouldn't even know. She's saying all these little things that I'm not really paying no mind because I'm happy I'm going to Vegas. I've never been there before, and we were supposed to go during our birthday month. It's the Mike Tyson fight. So what Kadada is observing, I'm not seeing what she's observing. In retrospect, it all makes sense later.
So that was one of the things that I think that was important that you just brung up. So Tupac, because a lot of people say, well, Tupac had his bulletproof vest in Vegas. And like I said, once again, Jamala, you were there. And this is the reason why we brung you on Out of Dialogue, so you could clear a lot of stuff up, because a lot of people have been running with rumors and these stories and things like that. So from your understanding and your knowledge firsthand, Tupac didn't have his bulletproof vest in Vegas.
No, he did not. Nope. Nope.
There were also people running around basically saying Tupac, he had a gun and it was this, that, and the other. To your knowledge, he had no gun?
No. The guns, to my knowledge, his bodyguard, Frank Alexander, at that time, God bless his soul, was told he couldn't have. Frank Alexander was told he couldn't carry his 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 um his pistol while in Vegas. So it was like once we got there, it was like, oh, so now Frank Alexander is not able to walk around strapped. I don't know for what reason why, but Frank Alexander was not able to walk around strapped. If you allow me to say one more thing too, is on our way to Vegas, right? Once we left the house, it's like a caravan of cars. We like 40 deep. So you got Suge and his daughter, me, Kadada, Pac, and Edie is in one car. Kay and Yaki is in the cars behind us with the Death Row entourage and everybody else. So we like 40 cars deep. We could have, I think, my memory, we made 2 stops. One stop was at 7-Eleven, where Pac grabbed up some magazines, a sun-kissed soda, some chips, and sunflower seeds because he loves sunflower seeds. So that was one stop. And then the second stop was a desert stop. It looked like some mafia, some Godfather shit. Because we made a road stop. We pulled over on the desert and met up with David Kenner, who was the attorney for Death Row. Now that scenario looked kind of like, to me, you know, I, I'm trying to put pieces together, but I'm still naive.
So let me ask you this, um, because I've never heard that before. David Kenner was in Vegas,
I don't know.
or
No,
this was a pit stop. This was a pit stop on the way to
it was a
Vegas.
pit stop on a desert pit stop on the way to Vegas. Like, like, like you ever seen The Godfather and they made a trip? They made a desert stop on the Vegas just to share a secret code. It was something like that.
That's interesting. See, once again, Jamala, once again, I've never heard that. I've never heard that before. And so that's why I asked you, because I don't know whether he was or wasn't in Vegas, but this was on the way to Vegas.
On the way to Vegas.
You moved into Tupac's Calabasas home in June of 1996. What was your role in the day-to-day movement of Tupac, and how did you help and contribute to his life at that time?
My day-to-day role was really simple and easy. Like I said, for the most part, um, Tupac stayed in the studio. He worked all day in the studio and he would get up early each morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, and be at the studio. So once Pac is up, it'll take the Outlaws a minute to get up. Cause you gotta understand, at that time we're all young. So, niggas drinking the night before. So the next day, most of us are lazy and don't want to get up, right? So Pac whole thing was these niggas better be up 5 minutes after me. So I would make sure that these niggas would get up. Like, yo, Castro, come on, get up. Yaki, come on, y'all gotta get up. Pac left already. He left. So now y'all gotta get up and be at the studio. So I would make sure that they would get up, go to the studio. Again, I'm frying chicken because Pac will call and make sure that somebody will come to the house while Pac is at the studio to pick up the chicken that I fried and take it back to the studio. It was moments where before going to Vegas, Pac had bought a bunch of CDs. And back in the day how they had the CD cover, how you could take your CD out the CD case and put it like in an album book cover type thing. So he would have me in charge of rearranging and arranging his album CD covers, and he had bought a jukebox, and I was like, "Move, make sure you hook the jukebox up and add the tapes or the CDs that you want up in there." Cause I have a love for music. Pac know that, and we all love. Pac and I both love different types of genres of music. So we would put in, let's say, the Bee Gees and Hall and Oates, mix it with Ashford and Simpson and Gladys Knight, and one of the songs, one of the two songs that Pac played consistently while in Calabasas was Al Green. I'm so tired of being alone. I'm so tired of coming home. Won't you me, girl. Da, 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 da. That one and call me, come back home. Another Al Green classic, right? And Pac would run that consistently all the time. I remember one moment, and I had a cassette, right? And it was Total, one of that was on Bad Boys label. Remember the group, the girl group Total?
Absolutely.
So Total had a song that I used to rock a lot, right? I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but I used to rock that song a lot on the cassette tape in Pac's house. And every time Pac would come home and see that cassette tape in his deck, he would take it out and rip it apart, stomp it out. Like, I don't want this shit in my house. But what I would do is like take the tape and tape it back up. You know how you swell it back up, tape it back up, and all that. And so I did that at least. He broke the tape at least 3 times because I taped it up at least 3 times, played it again, and that was one tape he did not want in his house at all, and that was Total from Bad Boy label.
So basically, he didn't want nothing. He didn't want to hear nothing from Bad Boy at all.
Nah, he didn't like them niggas, Joe. He didn't have no respect for them, you know.
You were actually featured on the Machiavelli album. How did that come about, and what did it mean to you that you would be on such a historic project, if you will?
I think it happened by accident because because it was one day I wanted to go to the studio, not thinking that when you go to the studio, you're going to be in the studio for over 14 hours, right? And it's cold in the studio, yo. So I was under the impression that we go in the studio, we're going to chop up this song and then be out, not knowing that when brothers go in the studio to work, they really in there for over 10 hours. No lie. So that particular day, I'm in the studio, I'm cold. Pac is doing the Machiavelli album, and he's doing the track Blasphemy. And at the end of the song, he's looking around the studio. He's asking anybody in here, do anybody know a Lord's Prayer? Do anybody know any prayer? And I just happen to know the Lord's Prayer. Now, if you listen closely to the song, you'll see that I messed up the Lord's Prayer. I brought it to Pac's attention at the end of the taping, right? Or the end of the taping in the studio. I brought up the fact that I had messed up the Lord's Prayer. But Pac didn't give a crap. He was like, we're gonna run it anyway. Let it rock, keep it, let's keep it on there and let it rock.
So what song was it? So that the audience knows.
It was Blasphemy.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And at the end I'm saying the Lord's Prayer. Forever, endeavor, endeavor.
Oh wow. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to do that so that, like I said, once again, for the audience and the people who don't know, right, that they could check that out and hear Jamala on Blasphemy, which was a dope song. Which was a dope song.
Yeah,
Blasphemy
for sure.
was killer. Absolutely. You were also present during the To Live and Die in L.A. video shoot. What was that experience like behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes, it was fun because it turned into a food fight at Roscoe's for our chicken joint. But before that, during the pre-production of the video, Pac wanted. There's a scene in the video where Pac is on top of the steps in front of a monumental building, maybe, and he's holding my daughter Imani in his arms, right? And then there was a scene where he wanted I think he wanted Snoop kids, because Snoop and my daughter are kind of like around the same age. and he wanted Snoop kids, my daughter. He wanted all the kids and to be a part of this particular scene in the video. And all the other, excuse me, all the other kids fronted on Pop. When the time came to do the shoot, you know, the kids was, I don't want to do it no more. They want to go back home, or they want to stay in their mommy's arms. And, you know, Monty was the only kid that was like, I'm here to hold my uncle down, and I'm gonna stand with my uncle, and she did, and Pac was proud of her. And then after that, the shoot was over. We went to Roscoe's, ate, had a horrible food fight that I did not participate in, not at all. But they did, you know what I mean?
So which Roscoe's Chicken and Waffle was that? Was that the one on Sunset by the Paramount building?
No, the other one. What's the other location?
And off of Manchester?
So it had to be the one on Sunset. I think.
So on the Sunset.
Yes.
On Sunset.
Mhm.
Okay. On Gower Street. On
Yes.
Gower Street?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Sunset Gower. Right, right. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Pac is crazy, yeah.
After watching the 50 Cent produced Diddy documentary, did it change how you viewed Suge's role at all? And people alleging that he was involved with Tupac's death?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how was that?
How was that? Okay, because here let's go back to Keefy D, right? Let's go back to Keefy D, the brother I never heard of until after Pac died, and he started opening up his mouth. And even at that time, never paid it no mind. We still sat still, you know, remained quiet and still, and let the rumors talk. Let everybody just run off at their mouth. But then when this documentary came out, by the way, which was really a great job, the documentary itself was a great documentary, I must say. Now I'm looking at it, and while watching it, it's a lot of, oh, snap, wow, word, oh shit, yo, I'm bugging, like, wow, ooh, I'm putting two and two together. I'm putting the bits and pieces together, you know, and it made me think. And then in retrospect, it made me think about the encounterment I had with Suge in the elevator in Vegas after Pac had the fight with Orlando Anderson, right? So I run into Suge. Pac had the fight with Orlando Anderson. He come upstairs to the hotel room. First of all, when we get to Vegas, right? He flipped on me. He like, yo, move. Cause I'm thinking when we get to Vegas, we're gonna turn up. It's gonna be all lit. But once we get there, he turned on me. Like, nah, Moo, I don't want you coming out. You and Kadada stay in the hotel and so forth. So I'm feeling the way. I'm like, oh, shit, ain't this, like, how you gonna bring us out here? Now we gotta stay in our rooms. So I'm rebellious, right? So I'm being rebellious, right? So Shook Pop comes in the room. He's talking about how he just knocked out some dude. I don't know who the dude is. I didn't know later that this is Orlando Anderson, the head of the Crip and all this crap. You know what I mean? So when Pop come in the room talking about it, I'm like, oh, word, say word, Pop. So he changed. That's when he changed from the orange button-up shirt that he had on, and he put on the green, like, basketball jersey type of shirt, right? So at this point, he's looking for the Outlaws. He don't know where they at, and he's telling me and Kadada to chill in the room. That, everybody they outside, they wilding. It's Robert Wayne time, and again, showing his protection for us. He recommend that we stay in the room. But I came out the room anyway and ran into Suge. And when I ran into Suge in the elevator, he in there with his girl, right? So I'm like, yo, Suge, I know you heard how Pop knocked out homie. And as soon as before I could say homie, Suge gave me the silent, he put the finger on his lips to silent me. So that already gave me like, oh, let me tone it down a notch. After watching the doc and looking back to that moment in the elevator, it makes me think now that that was probably a way of Suge trying to show or give some protection over me. You know what I'm saying? Because he's quietly letting me know that the wolves are outside and I need to tone it down because I could come through the door loud and bold, you know what I mean? So that at that moment, after watching the doc, it made me think differently of Suge's position when I ran into him in the elevator.
And to clarify what you're saying, so you no longer thought that Suge, had anything to do with Tupac's death. It kind of opened up another narrative, if you will, by Keefe D basically expressing his involvement in it and all of the other things that he was saying.
Yes, and not only that too, Delray, because you thinking of Suge, I'm thinking of Suge. You know, everybody else got different views and different perspectives, but my first thought was Suge because of the accountment that I had with him, and the elevator just showed me some, and then of course it was, you can't never not think if the government has something to do with this. You know what I'm saying? Did the government do this? Did they um build the feud between East and West? You know what I mean? Did they use that to turn us against one another? So at this point, it's like who can we trust? We don't know. So this is where you be still and be quiet and let the chips roll where they roll.
I find that also to be interesting because, like I said, this was something that the world never knew about Jamala. You run into Suge in the elevator after the Orlando Anderson fight. So take me back to Tupac's initial reaction. Y'all in the room, he come in the room, take it from there.
So Pop comes in the room. So of course he's like, "Yo, I just knocked out homie," and he's all his adrenaline is at 10, right? He's Mike Tyson just knocked out homie. So the energy is big. You know what I'm saying? So again, he come in the room and I'm like, "Oh snap, word Pop for real." And he says to me, "Why you always gotta say word? Like word, nigga, word, yo, word." Right? So he had to make it clear to me that word means word, yo, word. I knocked homie out. You know what I mean? So I thought that was funny about Pac, yo, because he was like, "Why you always gotta say word? Word, nigga, word."
I find that funny because it's an East Coast thing, right? It's a New York thing. Like it's like really, but it's just another way of saying really. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I find that interesting. So what is Kadada's like when Kadada she's sitting there, right? What is her reaction? Is she nonchalant? Is she excited? Is she scared? Is she?
She's a little more nonchalant. She's not as boisterous as I am, and so Kadada was more quiet, laid back, and she's his fiance, so she's just being cordial to his excitement and everything, you know what I mean? And not trying to, she's just trying to be poised and Collective for sure. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting you say that, because a lot of people, once again, see, look, Jamala, you doing a lot of clearing up. You're doing a lot of clearing up because
Okay.
you just said what a lot of people had doubted.
Mm-hmm.
So Kadada Jones, Quincy Jones's daughter, shout out to Kadada if she listening. She was Tupac's fiance.
Yes. Yeah. Tupac plans was to marry Kadada that year. His plans was to buy the house because at that time they was just building up that area, Calabasas, Woodland Hills. They're kind of like right next door to each other. So they was building homes. Pac had the house that they had just built, and they was building homes across the street, um, next door. And Pac plan was to buy the house across the street for his mother, the house next door for my mother. He wanted me to stay at the house where he's at in 4730 Azuzina Road, Calabasas, California. He wanted me there at that address, right? And he had different projects coming up that he was working on. He wanted to start his own record company, record label, you know. He had other albums coming out that wasn't released yet. One of them was the Machiavelli album. If you think that wasn't released till after Pac died. He had the One Nation album that he was working on. Um, yeah, so many different projects that this brother had his hands on. You know what I mean?
Because you were close to him, did Tupac ever talk about wanting to leave Death Row or leaving Death Row, as you just mentioned that he was going to start his own record label and all of those things? Did he ever talk about that?
Yep. You want me to tell you a story?
Absolutely. That's what it's the art of dialogue.
I got a story. So
It's the
bust
art of
it.
dialogue.
So this could be a week or two prior to us going to Vegas, right? So we in the kitchen and Pac is on the phone. I'm in the kitchen, Pac is in the kitchen, and the Outlaws, everybody's scattered throughout the house. But Pac is on the phone, and this is what I seen with my own eyes. And Pac is going bananas, yo. He's wilding out. He's cussing out Death Row. Whoever he didn't say he just on the phone with somebody from Death Row camp, and he's going bananas. And all I hear him saying and screaming out is his masters, his masters. Yo, my brother head was sweating. He had veins popping out his neck, his head. He was at 10. And at that moment, I was scared. You know why? Because I thought that death was coming to the house to knock us all out. You know what I mean? Because again, we're in California. We're around amongst people that we're not quite understanding their culture, their gang lifestyle and stuff. You know what I mean? Again, we're New Yorkers. I certainly don't understand it. So I was a little afraid, I must admit, and I thought that death was coming to the house to knock us all out. Straight up.
And so when you when you see Tupac on the phone, had you ever seen him like that before?
No, not like that. Nope, 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 nope. Not like where his veins is popping out his neck and out his bald head. No, no, not that angry. And that's what scared me because of the anger, the rage that he was pouring out. You know what I mean? And it was like where you with my all I was just standing there stiff. I didn't even want to walk past him while he's on the phone. It's like, let me just stand here until he get off the phone, because he was, like I said, he was at 10 and he was pissed off. And one of the main things that he was talking about was his masters. Straight up.
So basically, Tupac was talking about wanting his masters and getting his masters. And you said about a week, 2 weeks. That's consistent with what Yasmin talked about, because Yasmin talked about the fact that when Tupac wanted to get his music, and they were on the set of a movie, and they wouldn't give him to him, and that's when he fired David Kenner and all of the other things because they wouldn't give. So that is consistent. Your firsthand view of what you saw is consistent with what Yasmin said, and Tupac was going to leave death row.
So, and thank you for that confirmation. So now you could understand my observation when we did the pit stop, desert stop, and met with David Kenner on some secret code. And not Tupac met with David Kenner, Suge did. Suge got out the car to meet with David Kenner on that desert stop. Okay?
Wow. I think that's interesting. And you know why? Because at this particular time, unbeknownst to the world, and we know now that David Kenner was fired, because y'all are going to Vegas, and this is September what, 6th?
This is September 7th, the day of the fight.
The day of the fight. Okay. So at that particular time, when you said that that happened, then David Kenner was in all actuality fired and should have, by then, all accounts, received the facts that Yasmin released. Yasmin released the facts showing that David Kenner was fired.
Yep.
This is groundbreaking.
Okay.
This is groundbreaking because no, and putting those two together, nobody ever knew that. Nobody ever knew about the pit stop. In regards to that, didn't really know about the situation with Tupac talking on the phone. So I thank you for the clarification. And also Yasmin, when she released the facts, basically proving that Tupac was upset about the masters and began to fire the people that he didn't want around or in his environment anymore.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that. So how did Tupac interact with kids in his life? Namely Imani, Zinga, Malik. Those are sexual kids. Imani is your daughter, when no cameras were around.
Pac was very compassionate. Pac loved the kids. And it was important for him to make sure the kids have everything that they needed, everything that they wanted, you know. But even as when Pac was a little kid himself, and this is growing up at this time, we're living on 112th Street, 7th Avenue, Harlem, New York. And Pac could have been about 10, I'm like 12. And at that moment is where I've seen Pac's compassion for babies and for kids, you know, his tenderness and how and his humanity for the babies, you know. And it was always important for Pop to, you know, he would say many times, we got to look out for the babies and the elderlies. It's the kids and the elderlies that we got to look after and everybody in between. But the babies and the elderlies is what's primarily more important to look after.
In Tupac's and Kadada's relationship, like you said, she was his fiance. Did Tupac ever talk about having kids of his own?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He did. He wanted kids of his own. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the reason why I asked that question, because that's something that's rarely ever talked about. Like I said, Jamala, about you being so close, living in the house in Calabasas, you would be privy to conversations that other people wouldn't be privy to. That's the reason why I asked. And I think that's a very interesting fact, because a lot of women you hear, they be like, I would have loved to have kids by Tupac,
Yeah, but Tupac didn't have no kids because you'll hear a lot of women say they had kids by Tupac. Or you'll see a lot of folks, because we've seen a lot of stupidity like that, fake sonogram, then shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Tupac didn't have any kids. He wished he would have made some kids prior to his death, of course. But no, he didn't have any kids at all. Mm-mm.
So that rumor, what you're talking about, is that rumor that was out there about some, I think it was a girl, saying that she was Tupac's daughter or somebody had to. So basically, what you're telling us is that's 100% false.
Straight up 100% false, yo. Yeah, facts.
Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up also.
You're welcome.
Wow. Before his death, did Tupac audition for any movies or acting roles that the public may not be aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't know.
You were there when Afeni Shakur found out that the Calabasas house wasn't actually in Tupac's name. Can you take me back to that moment?
I sure can, because once my aunt found out that house was not in Tupac's name, so you got to think, Pac got shot on the 7th. He died 6 days later. That's the 13th, right? So let's say a week, 7 to 10 days after that is when my aunt realized that this house did not belong to Pac. So that day, that same day that she realized that the house did not belong to Pac, was the day we had to leave. She didn't want to wait 30 days later. She didn't want to wait a week later. It was not now, but right now. And that's when the work started. We didn't have time to actually grieve for Pac because we had to work. You know what I mean? We had to first move out of this house that does not belong to Pac. And my aunt did not want to, would not allow us to spend another night up in that house because it did not belong to Tupac. So that was the start of the work. That was the start of it.
You actually played a role in a pivotal role in gathering the inventory. You were responsible. What was that like?
Oh, it was work. So it was inventory, gathering, getting all of Pac's stuff, all of his belongings, and putting it in storage, and then figuring out the next move. You know what was we gonna do afterwards? I think my mom and I was the last one to leave Calabasas because we was the ones that did the inventory. So at this time, we wasn't there no longer than less than a month. So Pac passed away on the 13th. By the first week of October, we was out. We had been out. We had left. So we're now back in Atlanta. And now we're getting starting to become familiar with the new normal. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And was that process emotional for you?
Of course it was. It was emotional because although we were still grieving, we still had a lot. It instantly became work. So we couldn't grieve like, I don't know how normal families would grieve, but we couldn't grieve like the average. Our grieving had to grieve in the process of us working. So if we're crying, we gotta cry and pack at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. If we're crying, we gotta cry and pack at the same time.
Wow. Did Tupac know before he passed that the house wasn't legally in his name? And could that been part of the reason why he was so upset?
I think that phone call that I observed when we was in the kitchen and he had blacked out and was going bananas and was at 100. I think all of that has some relevant to do with the masters. I think it all played a part in that. Yes.
Did you ever hear anything about an audit? About Tupac wanting an audit? Like he wanted to know about the money and his money and getting paid and like, cause I said the masters, the house, you know.
You know what I did hear though, and this is after the death of Pop, is that a lot of a lot of like a lot of possessions, a lot of like some of the cars that we thought Pac owned wasn't in Pac's name. They had a lot of shit in their dog's name. You know, it was a lot of it was a lot of death row business wasn't quite up to par. You know what I'm saying? So it was a lot of underhanded stuff involved with death row. You know what I mean? That made it where we was able to put two and two together. You know, and that's what made us realize that yeah, the house didn't belong to Pop, or this is not Pop's, or this they had this studio thinking that on paper it looked like it belonged to Pop, but it's really Nate Dogg's or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
I can't articulate it the way I seen it myself on paper, but that's what I have observed. Yes.
Would you be talking about the child support situation?
I don't know nothing about the child support situation.
No, no, there was a during the Afeni's lawsuit against Suge and David Kenner and Death Row, it came out that there was a check when they did the audit. The check, there was a check for a couple of $1,000, and it said that it was for Nate Dogg's child support. So that's what I thought you might have been talking about.
There you go. You hit it on the bingo. Yep.
Okay. So that was it.
That was it. And all that
Okay.
I said, that confirms with, because somehow Nate Dogg his name was in the paperwork a lot. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, rest in peace to Nate Dogg. Like
Definitely.
I said,
Rest in peace.
Unbeknownst to Nate Dogg, like I said, we don't know whether Pac confirmed or that to be down, but like I said, rest in peace to Nate.
Yeah.
You're at the house packing. How did that situation, from your observation, affect Afeni, Tupac's mother, emotionally?
I can't say because I'm a mother that has never lost a child before. So I can't speak on how it affects any mother that has lost a child. I can't answer that question.
Was that the first moment that you realized how little control Tupac actually had over his own life, when you realized the house wasn't in his name, some of the cars weren't in his name, and all the other stuff that the masters and things like that? Was that the first time you realized how much control Tupac didn't have over his situation?
That was the first time I realized that everything is not everything that's glitter is not yours, you know? And I realized the role that my aunt now had to play in this. You know what I'm saying? She's the one that lost her son. She's the mother that lost her son, and how she have to regain what's his. So it's more like watching my aunt go through this journey as she tries to regain back her son's possessions or assets or whatever, you know? And that was hard. to watch. But then again, under the same breath, it still became work for us to do. It was work. And each day it it was it became stimulating, in fact, you know, because we now learning a lot through the trials and the errors, you know. We learning through faults, through mistakes, and we're figuring out how to get from point A to point B through all the trials and errors and mistakes. You know what I'm saying? It became a learning process, you know? It became a straight up learning process because prior to this, none of us was in Pac's business like that. You know what I mean? We're just eating off of the hard work and blood and sweat that this man is pouring out. You know?
Tupac said one time in an interview, um, he said, I'm hustling and I'm thugging for my whole family. What you just said that, he was basically taking care of his family. Um, from your observation, is that the truth?
Of course. That was his main purpose and his ultimate goal. One of the things he said to my father, Thomas Cox, may his soul rest in peace. Thomas Cox, my dad, was the motorman. He rode the D train from Brooklyn to the Bronx. He worked double shifts, overtime, and his check took care of all 10 of us. You know what I mean? And once Pop seen he was at a level where he had made it, Pac had said to my father, the man that Pac looked up to, the man that Pac admired, the man that Pac respected as a man. Pac said to that man, your checks is no longer worthy here. I could take it from here, you know? But do you think TC was going to allow Tupac to pay any of his bills or anything? No. But he appreciate the gesture that Pac was trying to pour out of respect. You know what I mean? Because Pac goal was to take care of his family, and that's what he wanted to do, and which he did.
You and Tupac had already planned the trip to Las Vegas before September 7th. What was the original purpose?
The original purpose was to go to Vegas because he had always mentioned to me how much I would love Vegas. Again, I said our birthdays is in the same month. So the initial plan was to go to Vegas in June for our birthdays. Cause he was like, Moo, you gonna love Vegas. I'm telling you, man, Vegas is lit. Vegas is this, Vegas is that. I've never been to Vegas, so I was down. Somehow, something I don't know, but it was some kind of distraction or intervention that happened in June, which eventually had us go to Vegas in September.
As a matter of fact, you weren't even supposed to go to Vegas that day.
I was not supposed to go to Vegas that day. Mm-mm.
So what give me the story. What happened that made that change or change your mind? What actually took place that made it available for you to go to Vegas that day?
Kadada, because Kadada, like I said, didn't want to be the only girl on that trip. And Pac wanted me to stay home and hold the fort down. And Kadada kept asking, she was like, no, she didn't want to be the only girl on the trip. And I wanted to go. Pac eventually decided that I could go. And like I said, with Imani, the 4-year-old girl at that time, didn't want any of us to go. So in order to convince me to go, Pac had to convince everybody or make everybody take all your money out and give it to Monty so we could go to Vegas.
So now, what I want you to do is the day of Las Vegas. Take me in the car. Where do you leave from? When you get there, take me for the ride. Take the audience for the ride.
All right. So this how the ride went. We should pull up at Park House. Kadada and I is sitting on the front in front of the house. We waiting on the Outlaws and Pac to come out. Suge is telling Pac, you don't need the vest. You don't need the vest. Pac leave the vest at home. So now we in the car. Edie is driving. Pac is in the passenger seat. Kadada and I is in the back seat. Castro and Gaddafi is in the cars behind us. Before we hit the highway, of course, we went and picked up other death row members, other I guess gang members or whoever's that's rolling with the death row camp. You know what I'm saying? But we like 30 cars deep, yo. And from my understanding, I think it's a 5-hour drive from LA to Vegas. So we drive to Vegas, and again, we made 2 stops, one at 7-Eleven, and Pac wanted to get some sunflower seeds, a bag of Doritos, maybe a Sunkiss, and some magazines. And then we made the other desert stop. And that's where Suge Knight met up with David Kenner. But once we got to Las Vegas, we're at the Luxor Hotel, right? And once we checked in our rooms, again, you know, Pac is he's hyped and shit, and I'm hyped too because I'm thinking Kadada and I is thinking we're going to be able to attend the fight, and we're only there for one night. We was leaving the next day. We're only there for one night, just for the Mike Tyson fight. And so we check in. Once we get in our rooms, that's when Pop dropped the bomb. Like, yo, I need y'all to stay in y'all rooms, yo. It's robbery season out here, and I need y'all to stay in the room. So I'm baffled because I'm like, yo, I thought we was gonna go see the fight, you know? And but he leaves. He leaves. And me and Kadada, we sitting there with nothing to do. We don't know what to do with ourselves. I go outside downstairs to the lobby and come back up. And I run into Suge in the elevator after Pop came into the room. Because Pop came into the room looking for the Outlaws. I don't know where the Outlaws is at. But he's talking about how he just punched some out, and I'm like, yo, are you serious? He changed from that orange button-up shirt, put that green shirt on, and he left. He was going to look for the Outlaws. They plan was to go to the after party. I think it was Suge's Club 669, Club 669 or something.
662.
662. Yep. And that was the plan for them to go to the after party. And that never happened because then after I got the phone call, and who called me was Yasmin and Yafeo's mom. She calls me, and Kadada and I, of course, we get in the cab, get to the hospital, and
Hold on for a minute. But before you go there. So when you got the call, Yasmin called you
yes,
and told you you're actually in Las Vegas, but Yasmin calls you and tells you what?
she calls me from LA to tell me that Pop got shot. And I'm like, what? He got shot. Where he at? He at I forgot the name of the hospital that he was at. But she was like, go to the hospital and go check up and go see about it. So Kadada and I, we get in the cab and we go to the hospital. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this the first time, but when I got to the hospital, I was the only family member there, blood relative member of his family there. So they considered me or labeled me as his next of kin. Mind you, prior to us going to Vegas, I told you Pac had plans to buy the house across the street for my mom, to buy the house next door for his mom. My mother is on the road driving from Atlanta. She had sold her house. She had packed everything up. She got all of Pac's uh, guns and all his possessions in the trunk of the car. And her and my dad are driving to California from Atlanta. My mother, she got as far as Texas and heard about the shooting on the radio. So that hit her, caught her off guard. My aunt, she's in Atlanta. So I'm at the hospital on September 7th, that night of, at the hospital. And I'm there by myself. It's just me and Kadada. So I'm his next of kin there. And the doctors are asking me questions. I'm asking questions. I see Pop for the first time, and for the first time in the hospital, I knew at that moment that he was going to have to fight hard for his life. This was nothing like the shooting that took place in New York. You know what I mean? He was in a total different state of being. It was tubes connected to his mouth, his nose, shit connected to the machines. It was a whole different scenario. So I was scared, but I knew I had to remain vigilant. I knew I had to be brave because my sister Kadada was distraught. She was traumatized. She was fucked up. You know what I'm saying? And I had to remain vigilant. I had to be brave and be strong. I knew that my family will soon come. I knew that my aunt was on the next flight out. I knew that my mother had, maybe she's in Texas, so she probably got another 10 hours to go on the road before she gets to Vegas. You know what I mean? So as the night goes on, moves forward, the police got the Outlaws hemmed up. Mind you, the Outlaws is in the car right behind Tupac's car when the car got shot up. Luckily, when I go back to Tupac, when I say how he was a man that loved to protect, profess, and provide for the woman, his instincts that night told Kadada and I to fall back, to stay in the hotel room. Because if not, if we would have thought differently, we would have been in that same car with Tupac and Suge. You know what I mean? He would have had us in the back seat while they're in the front seat on our way to the fight or to the club or whatever was going to taking place at that time. And so at that moment, I had to remain brave and remain strong while I wait for the other family members to come. So as the night rolls on, we're now day 2, September 8th. And I didn't get relieved from the hospital either that night, the late night of September 8th, or early September 9th, when my aunt came and when my mom came. I was able to be relieved from the hospital. I don't know who flew with me from Vegas. I don't remember who flew with me from Vegas back to LA because I know I didn't fly by myself. But once I got back to LA, I went to the Wilshire house. It's the Wilshire apartment on Wilshire Boulevard that Pac had. And Jasmine Guy was there with my daughter waiting for me. And I was relieved from the hospital at that moment.
Wow.
At that moment, once I was relieved at that time, so this is now day 3. So now the Outlaws is back on surface. My mom is at the hospital. My aunt is at the hospital. Yasmin, everybody is at the hospital at this point, but me. I'm back in LA at the Wilshire House.
So Kadada, she stayed at the hospital also.
I don't know if she stayed um those 6 days there, because the plan, one of the plans too, Delray, was that we was hoping that if Pac was able to recover, that Kadada's dad knew someone overseas that could medically or holistically help Tupac to recover. From my belief, I think it was something or someone that Quincy Jones had met or encountered with before when he had went through some sort of medical scare. It was some type of holistic type of treatment. Either Quincy Jones or Kadada's mom may have recommended that Pac would intake in, but he didn't have that much time.
When did you hear, and how did you hear that Tupac had passed?
I was at the Wilshire House and I got the phone call that Pac had passed.
Do you remember who called you?
I don't. It could have either been more than likely it was probably my mom.
When you heard that, thinking about everything you just told me, coming into the room, being all hyped up, because this is where you taking me now, because I'm getting it from you, coming in the room, being all hyped up, telling y'all, hey, you know what, y'all fall back, it's crazy out there now. We just got to something, blase blah, and all of what you've known from moving into the house um, in June until this moment. Now you at the Wilshire House and you get a call. That must have been devastating, huh?
It was quite devastating. Um, at the Wilshire House, now it becomes a little blurry after that phone call, after finding out that Pac had passed. That time becomes a little blurry because after that, we went back to Calabasas. And after that was when my aunt found out that this house did not belong to Tupac. And after that, that's when the work began, you know? So some of those days it's a little blurry to me. What I do remember is that we left Calabasas. We wasn't there no less than a month after Pac died. Pac died September 13th. We was out of California by the first week of October. By I think October 6th was the day we left. My mom and I was on a red-eye flight back to Atlanta. And that's where we had to get resituated, you know, because we had like everybody situation was discombobulated because the plan we was all living about to live in California. So now we had to regroup and get resituated.
Because you were so close to everything that was happening with Tupac's situation with Snoop at that time. Snoop had said a lot of things about the situation, saying that him and Tupac wasn't on the best of terms. Did Tupac ever express anything about that?
No, not necessarily, but I have overheard, you know, situations like that. But I must say that when I seen Snoop, when Snoop, I guess it must have been the second day that Snoop came to the hospital. And this is the first time I've ever seen a tall man look short when he heard that Pac had passed, It broke him. You know what I mean? So whatever differences that they may have had, prior, and it could have been 2, 3 days prior to the Vegas thing. I think it became irrelevant at that point because I've seen that brother really broke down and cry. I watched my aunt. I've seen at the time when my aunt came to the hospital. That was the moment I was able to be relieved, right? And once I seen my aunt, I broke down, right? And my aunt lifted me up because I watched at that moment in the hospital how my aunt was consoling everyone there. Snoop Dogg, it was Snoop, it was Danny Boy. Those are two that I remember clearly. I know it was others that came. I don't remember a lot of others that came through, but at that moment, it was Snoop who I seen break down and look 5'3". His height shortened to like 5'3". You know what I mean? I watched how my aunt consoled everyone there at the hospital, because people was like really, they was up, yo. They couldn't believe it. It was a big thing. Pac died, you know what I mean? So it became a candlelit vigil thing. It was that emotional. And my aunt had to become a fighter when she wanted to be weak. She wanted to, you know, but she couldn't. She couldn't.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's very important because I've never heard it expressed that way when you said that Snoop, in your eyes, became shorter based on the emotional toll that Tupac dying, from your observation being there, had on him. And I think, because a lot of people, they say various things about Snoop and Tupac's situation. I think right here today on the Art of Dialogue, we're getting confirmation, information of what really went down. Afeni Shakur actually consoling him, you actually seeing that, and you giving your firsthand account as to what that was. So, like I said, I appreciate that very much. Do you think the release of Tupac Hit 'Em Up took the conflict between Tupac and Biggie to a level that couldn't be walked back?
I think that hit 'em up, hit it 'em up, yo. It did, yo. Yo, when Hit 'em Up dropped, I was in New York, right? When it came out, because it dropped like early June. It dropped in June. Sometime in June, 96. Hit 'em Up drop. And I'm in New York. And all I hear, you coming out the store, you coming off the train, and you can hear other people chatting like, yo, you heard that new Tupac joint? That Hit 'Em Up shit? Yo, Pac is wildin'. That bugging. So, excuse me. So hearing other people talk about it, I knew the shit was hot. And I knew I was going to California soon to meet up with Pac and everybody. But Pac adored himself, right? Pac got a kick out of him own self. So when he dropped the Hit 'Em Up, he got a kick out of it himself listening to it. Like, oh shit, I said all that. I said that. Nah. So it was like, yo, should we leave it on there, Pac? You sure you want to leave all that on there? And Pac was like, yo, that shit. Leave that shit on there. Let that shit rock. But no, I knew that was gonna be the spark of a East West Coast feud. How was we gonna um handle it in the long run? We didn't see any of it coming. Hopefully we was hoping it could die down, but it sparked it. And Pac had to spark it. Because, like I said, when he came out of jail, he was pissed off. And that's one of the things he went straight to the studio to do, was hit him up. And then after hit him up, it's All Eyes on Me, Machiavelli, and everything else that came afterwards. You know what I mean?
During the time, and I tried to tell people in regards to uh, the Faith Evans situation, a lot of people didn't believe Tupac. Back then it wasn't no social media or anything like that.
Right.
So when they heard hit him up and they heard him first come off saying he had been with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans, they didn't believe it. From your understanding, what did Tupac tell you in regards to Faith Evans?
Tupac came home and told everybody, yo, guess who I just, and we like, who? Yo, I'm like, yo, word? Again, here I go with this, say word, right? He like, word, but one thing about Pac is not gonna lie about, nothing like that, so if he said it, it happened. It happened. It's as simple as that, If I was her, I probably would deny it too. You know what I mean? But it happened, and I believe so.
So if you were her as a woman, just take me into that frame of mind because you just said that.
Yeah.
You said if you were a woman, then you would have denied it too.
I would have denied it too, without a doubt.
Based on what?
Based on
based on what?
Based on the fact that I'm a married woman, married to a big fat guy named Biggie. So you know what I mean? So that right there that's something I would take to my grave. Nobody would never know. Respectfully.
So check this out. So what do people still misunderstand about the atmosphere at the hospital that night in Las Vegas? What do people still misunderstand? Because a lot of people claim that there were death threats. Did you hear any death threats or about any death threats at that particular time?
Yep. So the death threats came afterwards from my experience. It was when at the hospital there was a journalist, I believe later, but during the time at the hospital, it was a journalist named Kathy Scott who had released this book called The Killing of Tupac Shakur, right? And in the back of that book, she had listed my aunt's recent address in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was my aunt's recent phone number to the house number, right? In the back of that book. And from that moment, I was shocked to see how much phone calls we was getting. For one, during the daytime, we would get calls from the East Coast, right? And some would be death threats, and some would be calls to assure us that we would be protected. You know what I mean? Whatever we need, they got for us. If we need muscles, we got muscles. The wolves will come out. And then during the night, we'll get calls from the West Coast because you got to think of the time difference. So if it's 12 o'clock, midnight here on the East is 9 on the West, right? So this would be all night. So 3 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast is 12 midnight on the West. So throughout those hours, we would get calls from the West Coast with the same type of mentality, whether we got the wolves to come out for you or we're the wolves that's coming to get you. You know what I mean? And we got through that period. It didn't take long. at all. It didn't last long, put it like that. We was able to get a fence up. That's when we built up our security. We fenced the house up. We got a fence, a gate up with a security code and intercom and cameras all around the property and changed the numbers and and tried to move forward from there.
Was there a moment in the hospital where you knew before anybody said anything, because you were the first family member there, that Tupac wasn't coming back?
I didn't. I nope, because I was being hopeful. I was being hopeful and hoping that he would be able to survive this. Although I knew it was going to be a long and hard fight, my concern was once he survived this, will he have the ability to write again? You know what I mean? Will he be able to write again? Will he be able to speak in the same tone or same manner again? So that was mainly my concern, was his um abilities and disabilities and how to move forward. If he had any disabilities, how are we gonna get through with that?
I've never heard anybody say that. Like I said, once again, because of your observation and being there firsthand, talking about disabilities and the possibility of disabilities and and your hope and the recuperation aspect, you were already thinking ahead. I think that's very interesting. Um, Yaki Gaddafi was killed just 2 months after Tupac. How devastating was that loss so soon after losing your cousin?
That was a devastating loss with Yaki Gaddafi. And it was more devastating to me because Yaki was the youngest. He was the baby, right? It was more devastating to me because Pac was already out there. He had put himself out there in certain situations where shit could happen. So with Yaki's death happened on the day. It happened on my brother's birthday, right? And it happened on the day that we was planning. It happened the day after we was planning Tupac's memorial service here in Atlanta at the Civic Center in Atlanta. The memorial service was going to be taking place on November 10th. Yaki, who I called on November 7th, 8th, and 9th to catch the flight from Jersey to Atlanta. Yaki was hard headed. Yes. Was he hard headed? Yes. You know what I mean? And he always missed his flight. You know what I mean? And this time he missed his flight because the plan was for the Outlaws to perform for Pac's memorial service on November 10th at the Atlanta Civic Center. So Yaki had a ticket already booked to leave Jersey the night of November 9th. And Yaki missed his flight. And then he missed the next flight. And then we hear the next morning of the 10th that Yaki was shot. And he was fighting for his life in the hospital in Jersey. Personally, me, myself, I had a nervous breakdown. My whole body broke down. I was done. I was a wrap. But with the nervous breakdown, the body is broke down. I'm a wrap. I'm this, I'm that. I still had to get up. I still had to take a shower, bathe myself so that we could go and complete this assignment that we had already assigned. And that was the memorial service of Tupac Amaru Shakur. You know, we had to grieve for Yaki later because we still got work to do. You know what I mean? So Yaki's death to me was devastating above all. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Young Noble
Mm-hmm.
passes
Mm-hmm.
last year, 2025. He did it. His last interview he actually did here on the Art of Dialogue
Mm-hmm. Yep.
before he passed. How did you process that loss after everything that your family had to endure?
Another heartbroken, another sad loss. Because it was another brother that we lost, you know? And the fact that we, you know, mental illness is real, okay? And you know, some you see, because prior to Noble's death, I've heard, I've, you know, I've heard others come to me, and you know, you see it on social media. We see Noble kind of spiraling out of control. You know, we seen some red flags like that make you say, "Yo, what's up with Noble? Is nobody?" You know, I always call Noble every birthday of his, and Noble and I communicated often. You know, but prior to his death, I haven't spoken to Noble in months. He died in July. I didn't call him on his last birthday in March because I knew that in March at that time, he was already spiraling out of control for what I was seeing, what he was putting out on the social media. You know what I mean? I knew that after Noble Moms died, that was a trigger. I knew that after Pac died, how it it traumatized these young kids. You know what I mean? You gotta understand these were young kids at the time, you know, and and it was as if they was lost souls after that. Like, you know, and how hard it was for them to recover. You know, a lot of us we turn to alcohol. You know, you throw on hit 'em up or against all odds and a bottle of a fucking Grey Goose or something. It's turned up. We angry, we raging, we mad, we pissed. Pac just died, Yaki died, and we still mad. We don't know how to move on, you know? And some of us stay stuck in that anger. You know what I mean? And how and trying to process on how to move forward. And then once Noble Moms died, you know, I want to say that that was a trigger to the start of the mental breakdown.
Where were you when you got the news that your favorite aunt, Afeni Shakur, had passed?
I was at home when I got the news, and when my aunt passed, I had just visited my aunt in California in April, the month before she passed. I was just in California with my aunt. And that was the one time that when I spent with my aunt, where she was the most tender and delicate I have ever seen her to be. You know, because my aunt was fierce. You know what I'm saying? She was fierce. And at this moment, she was soft and delicate. You know what she did that she would never do? She did my laundry without me knowing. So it was just little shit like that that was like, huh. In retrospect, you look back to wow, you know. And I remember us having a conversation in the bed, right? We laying up in the bed. Cause my aunt liked to smoke, you know, and we smoking and shit. And we laying up in the bed, sharing stories and sharing future plans. Cause my aunt, um, always seeing something in me that I may not have seen in myself. So she's talking about my ambitions and what she see in me and what we need to do collectively as a family um and she's explaining to me the meaning of my name. You know, she named me after her brother, her longtime brother, comrade, friend, Jamal Joseph, who was the youngest brother to join the Black Panther 21 party in New York. He was the youngest member, and he stayed under my aunt's wing, you know. And to this day, he loves and adores and admires and respectfully love my aunt. He's my uncle, Jamal Joseph. And my aunt was explaining to me that night the reason why she named me after Jamal. And I thought that my name was a Swahili name. And I learned later that night, sitting with my aunt, that my name is Arabic. And I was named after Jamal. And that Jamala, both means beautiful. So those are some of the dearest conversations we had. Um, it was lots of notes that she left me. Um, she's always willing to introduce me to certain people, to people where she know that would be a great um force or a great resource or tool for me to use. You know, it was important for her to show me how to build relationships. You know what I mean? How to build relationships with other foundations, because she had already had her Tupac Amaru Shakur Foundation set up. One of my jobs with her was to connect with other foundations to try and raise money for the Tupac Amaru Shakur Foundation. My aunt, if you don't mind if I share another story about my aunt. After Pac's death, right? We're now back in Atlanta, and for the first two birthdays after Pac's death, my aunt would put together a birthday celebration for Pac and invite Pac friends, and we would rent out the what was that? It was a venue in Stone Mountain, but we'll rent out the venue and invite all of Pac's friends, and it'll be a big party and everything. My aunt is another recovering addict. She's a recovering addict, right? So she did this for two birthdays. One birthday, Mike Tyson and everybody came, and that one um, time, the party ended up into a brawl, big fight. Mike Tyson and other celebrity friends was there as well, and it ended up to be a big brawl. Some went to jail, some came home, some got out the next day or whatever. But that was the moment where my aunt said that she was not going to spend another dollar of Tupac's money doing some shit like this. Especially because she is a recovering addict. You understand? And what took place should not have taken place because it was the liquor, the drinking, and all that escalated the fighting that took place at the club. So the next birthday, her mission was to open up a performing arts camp. and that was the Tupac Amaru Shakur Center of the Arts. And from that point on, her mission was to give back to the community. Now, this camp was a free camp, mind you, and we had 32 students. It ran throughout the summer, a summer camp for 4 weeks. Right? It was a free program, free lunch, good lunch, and she provided transportation for those that did not have transportation. It was a camp for children's ages 12 to 18. For 4 weeks, we was able to groom the kids to and have them a place for them to express their own creativity, to express their creativity and to put on a show, because we would have a choreographer, a artistic director. We had cameraman set up, so we was able to teach the kids how to work the camera, how to edit, how to shoot, how to then you got one teacher that's doing choreography, dance steps, and another teacher doing the artistic directing. So at the end of the month, we would put on this big show at the Rialto Theater, which would always turn out great. And my aunt did that camp. She ran that camp for a good 10 years, funding it, with her own money. It was many times, many opportunities where she could have got funds from the state or from the government or whatever, but she refused to. She didn't want to use their funds for her ultimately goal or missionary goal. You know what I mean? And at some point, we couldn't uphold it any longer. We had it for a good 10 years where it was free. After the 10 years, we had to start charging because she wasn't going to accept money from the state or from the government, and her money could no longer sustain it. So we had to now charge the parents, which was minimum. It's beeping on this side, which was minimum, but it was still able to run for about a good another 3 years. And then we had to shut it down. But that was just just a small fabric of the things that my aunt would do for the family, for her community, and for her people at whole.
Do you feel like you're carrying on both Tupac's memory and Afeni Shakur's strength now with you as you continue with your journey?
Most definitely. I am standing on the shoulders of giants, period.
Tupac has received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and recognition from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What do those honors say to you about his legacy?
That honor says to me how real his legacy is. Tupac was supposed to been got that award while he was alive. Just, under the circumstances, I guess, of Hollywood politics, he was able to receive it later. But it's always an honor, and with much gratitude and appreciation that we accepted that.
So were you in Los Angeles at the time that they laid down the star?
Of course I was. Yes, I was. I was there. It was important for me to be there.
And how did that make you feel?
It made me feel like an elevated high I never felt before. Word up, yo. It was amazing. It was awesome. You know what was awesome about it? Not only to see the love that people was pouring out for Tupac, but the love and the The knowledge of what people knew of not only Pac, but his family. So when I walked up on the block and seen the mob and crowd of people screaming out my name, I was I was incredibly amazed, and it was a moment that I could never forget. You know, it was just one moment I would never forget, and that was the love that was poured out all throughout that day in California. The love that they have for Pop nationwide, period. But at that time in California, West Coast, West Side, W hands up, it was popping. And you could feel that energy and you could feel the vibe.
Do you personally have any mementos, jewelry, chains, anything that Tupac gave you that still remind you of him till this day?
Yes. Well, to this day, no. But yes, I did. I just lost. Damn right. I just lost Kadada, Pocket Kadada. They had went to Italy. They did a shoot, I think, for Versace in Italy. This could have been a year prior to Vegas, or it could have been that same year, the year 96. And they had matching rings. That's where Pac, I think he must have got the Machiavelli ring. Kadada had a ring. Kadada had left me with her ring that Pac had bought for her. That had Amore engraved in it. It was like a platinum ring with the Amore had diamonds engraved in it, and it said on the back of it, "Much love from Pac." It was a ring that he had given to Kadada. Kadada gave me that ring after Pac died, and I just recently lost that ring last year ago. I don't know how. That's another story, another topic. We'll get back to that. And I've also had the death row chain around my neck because we went to the Mother's Day Death Row Mother's Day special where the Isley Brothers performed at that event. And I'm sure you may have seen photos that's floating all around social media with Art Afeni holding Zinga at the time she was a baby. My mother Glow is looking like this, and they're sitting at the table. And Pac had performed Dear Mama, and Suge Knight had gave all the attendees a death row chain. And that death row chain was snatched from my neck. That's another incident. Tell you about that later.
So no, we there, right? Who snatched the death row chain from your neck? Like, where were you?
I was in the elevator, and a brother named G, my ex-husband, Edie's uncle, who was my ex-husband at the time, he snatched the death row chain off my neck because he felt like I shouldn't be wearing this death row chain because we don't represent death row like that.
Wow.
I mean, it's a
It
true story.
no, but that's very interesting. I mean, I never knew about that. Like I said, and how did you feel about that, knowing that it came from such a sacred place? Did it make you angry?
It didn't make me angry. The death row chain, not at all, didn't make me angry because that didn't come so much from a sacred place. The ring that I lost was disappointing to me because that did come from it came out of a sacred moment, you know? The death row chain wasn't so sacred to me. It was really irrelevant to me. It showed no relevance for me at all.
What is your favorite Tupac song and album, and why does it resonate with you personally?
My favorite Tupac album is the Machiavelli album. Why? Because I was there during the days of him recording that album. And he did record that album within 7 days. My favorite song is Keep Your Head Up. Why? Because there has never been any brother, anyone to write a song that really he is speaking to us. He's speaking, and when I say us, I mean woman of my color, you know, the dark skinned woman. And that's how I took it. They say the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. He's talking about his dark skinned sister, his dark skinned cousin, his dark skinned mother, his dark skinned aunt. You know what I mean? I later found out that the song was written for Salt's baby. Salt from Salt and Pepper. I've heard that he wrote that song for her, for her daughter. But in all reality, that song is written for all of us, for all the black and brown women that's out here, all the little black, brown, dark skinned, light skinned girls that's walking around with the short hair like me, you know? That's what that song represents, and that's what that song is written for. Where he say, since we all came from a woman, got our name from a woman, and our game from a woman, I wonder why we take from a woman, why we break our woman, do we hate our woman? I think it's time to kill for our woman, be real to our woman, and heal our woman. Because if we don't, we'll have a race of babies that will hate the ladies that make the babies. We'll have a race of, you know what I mean? We'll have a race
Powerful.
of, yeah. So that right there alone is powerful. We'll have a race of babies that hate the ladies that make the babies, you know? And it's not too many brothers that stand up and speak about us like that. So that song personally resonates to me even to this day. You put on "Keep Your Head Up" and it speaks loud volumes.
Speak to me. You talk about you were there for the making of the Machiavelli album, right? Give me one moment that you remember in particular, other than your awesome performance on the album, uh, that you remember that sticks with you to the day.
When he did Hail Mary, right? So when he recorded Hail Mary, this is another funny story. So Yaki, of course, is late, hard headed. He could have missed his flight because Yaki was supposed to be on that track. Hail Mary. Come with me. Hail Mary. Come good then. Do you have it now? Do you want to ride or die? La 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 la. So Yaki come in the studio. He missed his verse on the track. So Pac is kind of pissed. Like, yo, man, where the was you? Why you wasn't here on time? You missed your verse. So if you can't do nothing else, say that shit you be saying in Jersey. What's that shit y'all be saying? Hey yo! Hey yo! So if you notice at the end of the song of Hail Mary, you hear Yak say, hey yo! Cause it was as if since you wasn't able to complete this assignment with laying your verse in the booth, say that dumb shit you say when you out in the streets in Jersey. What's that shit you be saying? Hey yo, say so. Do that. Go in the booth and lay that shit down. He was serious, but it was comical at the same time. You know what I mean? And Yaki in the booth, hey yo, yo.
And you know what's so funny about that?
What?
Excuse me. You know what's so funny about that is Yaki at the time. I don't really think he understood publishing. Because if that was me, I would have been in the studio on time so I can get on the song, so I can get my writers and my publishing and all of those things.
But you got to understand, these brothers, they young. A lot of them, they don't see. Excuse me. This is Pac's drive. This is ambition, right? This is something that he wanted to do. So it's like as if, okay, this is something I want to do. I need a team to roll with me. Who I'm gonna call first? I'm gonna call my younger brothers, my cousins, the ones that surround me all the time. Okay, you gonna do this, Yaki, you gonna do that, Edie, you gonna do that. But does it mean that this is what these brothers really want to do? No, not necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Yaki, he'd rather be outside in Jersey. You know what I mean? Kay, he probably rather be on the basketball courts playing basketball, you know? But it was something that they collectively decided that we're gonna do this together because Pac asked us, so we're gonna do it. It later became a rap group. Before it was the Thoroughheads. And then it was Dramacidal, and then they became the Outlaws. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that just because Pac wanted to do this, that this is something that everybody else wanted to do. You got to understand, a lot of times we went along with it. You know, we went along with it because there was nothing else provided for, you know, what else is they going to do? Your best choice is to roll with him, or we going to stay here in apartment 3B and eat rice and gravy. You know what I'm saying? So that's
I
how that took
absolutely
place.
understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. Wow. Yeah, that's like I said once again, but even though all of that transpired, it all came out to be legendary.
It all came down.
Even with the not to be legendary. Even without them knowing, it all came out to be legendary based on Tupac's vision. Like you said in the beginning of the interview, his vision of what he wanted and to be able to include them. I don't really know, like I said, and like you said, because they were young, uh, if they really knew how important the work that they were doing at that particular time and who they were doing it with.
Nope.
You know?
We didn't even know that Tupac was Tupac the star. He was just Pac. He was still just Pac to us. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like if we was looking at him now, then it's like, yeah, you know. But even then, he's Pac and he's blowing up and shit, and we asking, let's say, for example, we could still be on the level where we trying to see, can we get in free? Yo, let us in, yo. You know what I'm saying? You know
Put
what I
me
mean?
on the
You know
list.
what I mean? So you gotta think sometimes like our mentality wasn't that mature yet. We want to know if we could get through the door free, and if you could we borrow money? You know, soon you think a nigga make it, you think a nigga got it. You know what I'm saying? So so our mentality wasn't so sharp or mature enough to where Pac's level was. Not at all. Not at all. He was beyond his years, yo. He was beyond the beyond. You know what I mean? He was beyond the beyond, yo. We didn't see what the vision that he seen. We could not have seen it, not at all. You know, one of the things that Pac would say oftentimes, and that was, I'm a legend in my own time. When I die, I'm going to be the most influential person in this world. He said that many times. When I die, I'm a, no. He used to say how he's a legend in his own time, and when he died, he's gonna die a legend. He already knew that he was gonna die and become immortal. He seen that himself. I didn't see it. I didn't think he was going to die at 25. No. I thought he was going to live long, and who was going to die first was one of the elders, but never one of us. Not at that time.
As a matter of fact, I think that's so poignant that you touched on that, because he did prophesize his own death. In a lot of the songs that he made, he prophesied his own death and talking about uh, being a legend and being and immortalized and all of those things. So it's crazy,
It's crazy.
but it's also, go ahead.
And what's crazy about it, because when he's saying it at the time, it just sounds like, oh, Pac, go ahead, man. It doesn't sound so surreal. You know what I mean? It just sounds like a nigga's blunted and he's just talking. You know what I'm saying? It don't make sense till later.
And that's what makes it genius and great and legendary. You're now, Jamala, you're now a children's book author. What inspired Pocky and Tari and Mommy, I Think I Have Diabetes, which are two different books? The first book was Pocky and Tari, right, which we're going to talk about. And the other book is Mommy, I Think I Have Diabetes. What inspired you, first of all, to write the book Pocky and Tari, and what is it about?
What inspired me to write Pocky and Tari was Pocky and Tari, a first cousin tell. What inspired me to write that book is to first give to be able to give children a path and a way for them to be able to live in a imaginative world, right? Pocky and Tari is a book based on two cousins who are curious and they love to ask questions.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Do you have a copy of it on you
I
or
do.
with you that you can show me?
Yep.
Let me see. Hold it up and show everybody.
And this is Pocky and Tari.
And it's available on Amazon for anybody interested in buying the book. I definitely, if you have any children on the reading level, it's something that you should buy and definitely support. Jamala is a children's author, and once again, we applaud you. Continue on telling me about
Thank
the
you.
story.
And not only is it available on Amazon, it's on jamalasblog.com as well. But to continue the story, so Pocky and Tari are curious. They love to ask questions, right? So in the story takes place in the Bronx. And they go to school in Harlem. It's very common for kids to live in the Bronx and travel to Harlem or Manhattan or Brooklyn to go to school via subway or bus, right? So this particular day, I'm taking Pocky and Tari to school this day. And one of the things growing up in New York City, and when you come out your building, we are approached with destitution. You know what I mean? So it's what we have to see and smell and hear just to get from point A to point B. Now, it could be a really grimy scenario, a grimy setting, grimy scene, because what we have to see is the zombies that's walking up and down the blocks. You know what I mean? You got your crackheads that's begging for money. Besides that, we got dog crack that we got to be careful not to step on. You got the rats that's running across your feet and shit. You got the garbage that's piled up on every block in front of every building that stinks, you know? And on the other hand, we in the midst of hearing all these different sounds of music and languages and the sound of people scrambling and hustling and bustling to get from point A to point B. You hear Mr. Softy, you hear the fire truck, you hear the police sirens. I mean, it's busy. It could make you dizzy, you know? And these two kids, a lot of times they get tired of having to see this and hear this and smell this every day. And they want to hear a story, you know, and they want to escape from this reality into an imaginative world. And what I do is we get on the subway and they want to hear a story. And I tell them a story about how they are cubs living in the jungle, and there are cubs of matriarch Glow and Panther warrior Afeni. And in the jungle, they come across obstacles because the ultimate goal is to get across the Zambia River. But in order to get across the Zambia River, they run across a lot of obstacles, a lot of triumphs. You know, they come across Hugo. Hugo is the big bad wolf that want to steer them in a different direction. You know, they run across the lonely lion who becomes courageous and wants to learn and get knowledge, you know. They come across Taco, the hyena. They come across Isha, the elephant. And with them coming in encounterment with all these other animals in the jungle, that the goal is to get across the Zambia River. But how do they do so? What do they have to do that? They have to first learn how to survive. How do we survive in the jungle? You know, what foods do we eat? You know, so that's where Isha the elephant comes in, and she shows them how to collect the honey, the bark, the wood, how to survive one night in the jungles to make it over. And to pour out that is to show kids, to show us what it takes to achieve, what it takes to succeed, what it takes to get over the Zambia River, what it takes to get from point A to point B. And what it takes to do that is collective work and responsibility. It takes unification. It takes teamwork. You feel me? It takes purpose. You know what I'm saying? So these two boys, as they navigate through the woods and, over the hills and through the woods and, you know, to get to the other side, these the obstacles that they're facing. These the lessons that they're learning. But it also snaps them back out of that reality, that imaginative world, back to the reality. Because you know why? We got to get off the train.
Wow.
We got to get
Awesome.
off the train, you know what I mean? And get back to the reality of what the real world is. It's a lot of kids that, growing up in our inner city communities, and it's a lot of kids I've seen, just being a kid myself, how, depressing it can be. Sometimes we look at our parents and we be like, why we gotta live here? Mommy, why we gotta live in this building? Or, why we gotta go to this school? Or and these two cousins here, they they want to escape that reality and go into an imaginative world that can make sense, and yet they could still have purpose. And
And so the book, itself is based on Tupac, who you said that you guys used to call Pocky growing up, and your brother
Qatari,
Katari.
yep, Castro.
And like for people who don't know, Castro was also a member of the Outlaws. Yes. Wow. Hold it up again.
Yep.
I think it's very important that people see this. Like I said, jamalasblock.com and Amazon, Pocky and Katari and Tari, I'm sorry, and it's available on Amazon. Like I said once again, so that's very important. There's another book you wrote. Um, but I think you sold out of those before you got to the
Yeah, I
interview.
did.
You know what I mean?
I did, yo. For real.
And so right, and so but you can still purchase it on Amazon
Yep.
and on Jamala's Block. But more importantly, it's called "Mommy, I Think I Have Diabetes." Talk about that story involving your daughter Imani.
Now that story is quite personal for me. And what inspired me to write that story is my daughter Imani. She's 33 years old now. But when she was 13 years old in the 8th grade, Imani has been coming to me, her grandma, her great aunt, Aunt Afeni, her aunt Set, her aunt Dana, godmother Aunt Dana, and saying to us, "I think I have diabetes, mommy. I think I have diabetes." And none of us, we didn't believe her. We didn't listen. We didn't hear her. We listened, but we didn't hear her. You know, my mother told her, Imani, girl, if you had diabetes, I would know you have diabetes. You don't have no diabetes. You need to go outside and play, right? My aunt would say the same thing. Girl, if you had diabetes, we would know that by now, honey. You don't have no diabetes. Go drink some water, right? She'll come to me and say, Mommy, I think I have diabetes. I think I have diabetes. And you know what I asked her? She said to me, she said, my mouth is dry, which is one of the symptoms of being a diabetic, is your mouth could become constantly dry. So she's giving me all these red flags, the red signs. She said, Mommy, my mouth is dry. I think I have diabetes. And you know what I asked her, yo? I said, yo, Monty, have you been smoking any of my weed? Because you know that makes your mouth dry. This is real talk. I'm dead serious because I have to express the ignorance of where I was at that moment. You know what I mean? And the look that she gave me made me think different. Like, oh, that was the wrong question to ask my kid, right? Time goes by, days go by, and she's still saying, Mommy, I think I have diabetes. So she go to school February 14th, 2006. She's in school now. And another symptom is the constant use of urination. So she's in class and she's constantly asking the teacher if she could get a pass to use the bathroom. The teacher thinks she's trying to skip class. So the teacher calls me up on the phone. And when she called me, I have to be honest, I have to admit and take accountability for my ignorance and my stupidity, yo, because I was pissed. I was angry that why is Monty doing this shit? You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking she on some bullshit and I'm still not understanding the diagnosis. So I go to the school like, all right, Monty, you think you got diabetes? Come on, we're gonna go to the doctor. So we go to a primary doctor that she's been seeing since she was 4 years old. And the doctor, the first thing they ask you is, do you have insurance? You could be dying and they're going to ask you, do you have insurance, right? So they ask, do we have insurance? Of course we do. And what they do is they take a prick of blood from your finger, or they could uh, use your urine to detect whether or not you're type 1 or type 2 diabetic. So they did so with Imani, and the doctor actually sent Imani home and told her that she was dehydrated and she needed to drink more water. Imani knew better because Imani, as a grandparent's child, she would often growing up from the time she was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, when she would go to the doctor's office with her grandparents, she paid attention to the posters on the wall inside her grandparents' doctor's office. So, you know, the posters that say if you have diabetes, this is your symptoms, high cholesterol, or um, high blood pressure. You know, they got these informations that's surrounding the doctor's office that most of us never pay attention to. I know I don't, right? But Monty at that time, as a child, was paying attention to those billboards on the wall, which later made her put the two and two together. She compared what she seen on the walls to the feelings that she was feeling within her body, right? And that day, when the doctor sent her home, she knew differently. She wanted to go back to that same doctor the next day. She asked if we could take her back to that same doctor. And she told Dr. Armstrong that I think you need to check a little further because I think I have diabetes, yo. And once that doctor took that same urine and or blood from Imani, it showed that her blood sugar was so high they had to rush her to Children's Eggleston Hospital here in Atlanta. At that time, it was rare for a young child to diagnose herself with diabetes. So CNN did a special report on Imani because they thought that it was a very unusual story for a young kid to diagnose herself with diabetes, and it was type 1 diabetes at that, which means that Imani has to take insulin every day in order to live. Her body does not produce any insulin whatsoever. Your body produces insulin, you know. If you're a diabetic, your body produces insulin. But you can wean yourself off of medication if you're a type 2 diabetic based upon diet and exercise. Now, if you're a type 1 diabetic, it's only insulin. It's the insulin that keeps you alive. If Monty don't have insulin, if Monty is without insulin for a day or two, her body goes into a coma. You know what I mean? So she has to live off the insulin in order to live. She has to have insulin because her body doesn't produce insulin at all.
Wow. Amazing.
Another important statement I would like to make is that how important it is for us to know this information and share it amongst others, because at that time Imani is surrounded by really smart, intelligent young people, older people, you know, and none of us knew that diabetes is effective with our children as well. It's not only effective to the obesity or 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 the elderlies, you know what I mean? It's in our children as well. And we have to pay attention to that. We as black, brown people, Latin Americans, we have to pay attention to how effective diabetes is in our community. We have to be careful of what we eat and the intake of sugar and salt, you know. A lot of times we don't have enough information. And with the information is the only way that we're able to grow and move forward, you know. Without information, we remain ignorant. We're stupid and we're naive. We don't know, you know. But once we was able to get the information, it just made us a little more wiser, and and it gave us the strength to move forward to this new normal that Mani is now having to live with.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Um, Let me take you back to New York for just 1 minute. In regards to the situation between Tupac and Nas. What did Tupac say about that situation when he came back home before y'all went to Vegas?
Um, from what I remember is that they had see from what I remember is that Pac and Nas had made peace. They had shook hands, they hugged it out, and it was all good. And that was from my memory. You know, I don't know what others had said or what others have heard, but I left with that knowing after Pac died that Pac and Nas has definitely broke bread, you know? Yeah. And I'ma stand on that. I will stand on that. Cause I know and I believe that Nas loved and had a lot of respect for Pac and vice versa. Pac had a lot of respect and love for Nas, you know. It was just that East Coast, West Coast shit that just went out of control. It was out of control for one. And it didn't make no sense. It didn't stand on nothing, you know? And I think people was using that as a tool to tear us apart as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
Jada Pinkett recently wrote a book, and she talked about her relationship with Tupac and Tupac proposing to her while he was in prison and wanting to marry her while he was in prison. Um, did Tupac ever express to you uh, his love and dedication to Jada Pinkett as a friend? They
Yes.
went to the School of Arts together and all of that.
He did. Tupac had a lot of love for Jada because they was friends. They did go to school together and they was friends. But I also remember later, you know, sometime before Vegas, Tupac had met with Jada, and that meeting didn't quite go so well. You know, I think he was a little disappointed in Jada for what I don't know, but I remember the demeanor of him coming home after meeting with Jada, and it was he was quietly disappointed in whatever the conversation that occurred during a meeting. I didn't get too much into it because you know you always think that we have more time for it. So it's always like, oh, I'll ask him later. You know what I'm saying? I'll get with him later on that, you know? But later never came. Yeah. But he had a lot of love for Jada, you know? And that's something nobody can take that away at all.
And this question right here is the final question. What do you want the world to finally understand about Tupac? Not as a myth or a martyr, but as a human being that you loved.
I would like people to know that Tupac was here to shed light upon us. He embarked hope. He embarked light, hope, discovery, you know. He embarked vigilance, you know what I mean? He was creative, smart, you know, his love for life. Yeah. Pac was and he was a shining star. He was the shining star. He was the the flame that was dying out. Yeah. And a lot of times, because a lot of times that way I go back and I watch some of Pac's interviews and some of the stuff that he has spoken publicly, some of the things that he has said publicly, and a lot of times, Pac spoke. Can't nobody spoke. Pac spoke for himself the way nobody else can. You know what I mean? He gave you his all that nobody else can't speak for Pac better than how Pac could have spoken for himself. And for those that, you know, that may have taken part or participated in the death, the murder of Tupac Shakur, you know, I God God, I pray for you. I pray for them, And it was just it was their hands. It was their own hands and the words that came out of their mouths that caused their own destruction. You feel me? It was their hands and the words that came out of their mouths that caused their own destruction. If these brothers were smart, I would recommend that they take their shahada. You know what I mean? And find an imam in the prison and take your shahada. And you cry, you get on your knees and you cry and you beg to Allah, to God, for the wrongdoings that you have done. You have to first admit your wrongness, take accountability for the wrong that you have done. You know what I mean? And make salat. And maybe, just maybe, God will spare you a little bit of peace. Well, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
on that note, you spawned one more. You spawned one more. What do you hope Tupac forgives the world for?
I hope that Tupac can forgive the world. Tupac to forgive the world for him not being able to just sit still. You know what I mean? If Pac was able to have just sit still for that moment. I wish that Suge Knight would have had a better protection over Pac the night of September 7th. I wish that knowing that that Pac is hot headed, that Pac is ready to be center front line. You know what I'm saying? You know that he could go from 1 to 10 at any given moment. He's your artist, you know? I think that Suge should have put a better protection on Pac and not have Pac be the front, the brother that's on the front line ready to throw the first blow. You should have had your other muscle brothers doing that. Have them that's in the blue or in the red or whatever colors that you're claiming. Have them do that and let your artist go upstairs and rest. Cause he got projects to complete. You know what I mean? He has assignments that he has to complete. And you know, only if, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. You know what I mean? Shoulda, coulda, woulda. You know? Shit.
History often remembers icons louder than it remembers people. What Jamala shared today wasn't about fame. It was about family, responsibility, love, and loss. Tupac Shakur wasn't just the voice of a generation. He was a cousin. He was a son, a man trying to outrun the weight of the world placed on his shoulders. Conversations like this matter because they return humanity to names that history turned into headlines. To Jamala, thank you for trusting us with your truth. To the audience, listen carefully because stories like this don't just preserve history, they correct it. This is the art of dialogue. Jamala, I want to thank you for your time, thank you for your patience, and thank you for your beautiful spirit.
Delray, I want to thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to sit on your platform. Thank you for the prep talk. Thank you for the pre-production prep. You know, I appreciate your kindness and I appreciate your generosity, yo. Peace, love, and blessings. Right to live, live to right, right on.